The story of Yuma Anno begins in the days when he lived without any real feelings or joy in his monotonous life. But that routine was replaced by days ruled by fear with the emergence of monsters in a chaotic world. Faced with the chaos, he wonders if people would laugh or get mad if he said he wanted to take a chance and have fun. At that moment, he faces a gigantic tower and comments on how the place of a high-ranking demon is quite tall. The young man then adjusts his hat, thinking that it will be a battle of wits and skill against the demons. Giving a confident smile, the protagonist says this sounds like a fun game that is about to begin. The story goes back 1 year in the past when dungeons simply appeared all over planet Earth. Along with them, monsters began to emerge, and modern weapons couldn't even touch these creatures. Soon the world fell into chaos, and someone realized that everything was exactly like the popular game Vanaheim Online. It was at that moment that people began to awaken, becoming beings who could fight against the monsters. These players had classes and used their skills together, forming guilds to fight against the threats. Now in the present, a high-ranking demon named Balzafar from one of the 5 great clans is introduced. A guild prepares to attack the monster, so the leader shouts for all units to attack at once. One of the girls in the group is very confident, saying that they are the only ones who have made it this far. Then the guild members charge forward with everything they have, and the team's mage launches a massive fireball. However, the demon defends himself easily, preparing a counterattack with his dark energy. The mage is completely shocked to see that her attack was cancelled out and a purple energy is heading her way. With no chance to react, all the guild members are hit directly by Balzafar's power. With just one single strike, all the players who were attacking are now fallen on the ground, defeated. The group leader can barely believe it, questioning what kind of power that was from a completely different level. Balzafar stares at the fallen players and says it would be a waste to finish them off just like that. With that, the demon claims he is going to make things more fun while preparing a mysterious spell. Suddenly, the scenery changes, and the guild leader finds himself in a place full of lava and mountains, wondering what happened. He is completely lost, not understanding where they ended up and how they got to that location. In front of him, Balzafar appears as a giant and mocks them, saying that humans are fools for trusting what they can see. Realizing the situation, the warrior panics because at this rate, they would all be wiped out easily. But at that moment, a soft melody is heard, and a mysterious figure wearing a hat suddenly appears. Yuma Anno faces the demon head-on and praises the illusion the creature made, saying it was a good job. The protagonist then reveals himself with a confident smile and asks if the monster can solve this situation. Balzafar is surprised and wonders how a mere insect managed to see through his powerful skill. At that, the illusion breaks and the guild leader returns to normal, realizing he was in the castle room. He understands that it was all an illusion, but even so, the situation is still very dangerous for everyone. Next to him, the warrior sees Yuma and wonders who that guy is and when he appeared there out of nowhere. Meanwhile, our protagonist admires the treasures in the demon's room and comments on how cool it all is. He approaches a suit of armor and wonders if humans can also use demon toys. The young man then stops and his attention is drawn to a large sphere of dark energy in the center of the room. Looking closer, he sees a purple orb full of wick power floating over a detailed pedestal. Seeing his relaxed attitude, the guild leader shouts, asking what he is doing in such a dangerous place. Yuma Anno just smiles and tells him to relax because the more desperate the situation, the more fun it gets. Balzafar then gets annoyed and says that even seeing through the illusion, they cannot resist his power. The monster then prepares to attack with everything he has and says his games will burn their bodies to dust. With that, a massive explosion of fire hits the ground, and the guild leader complains that it's too hot. But Yuma Anno seems calm and says he finally understands how the demon's power truly works. He then kicks a rock and realizes that Balzafar is using illusions to disguise objects all over the floor. The young man picks up the item and deduces that it was what hit them and not the fake fire he created. Back in the throne room, our protagonist faces the enemy and says he forces everyone to see the same illusion. With the orb in his hands, he smiles and questions if that would be the work of a rare dark legacy. Balzafar is visibly shocked by the revelation and begins to break into a cold sweat, not knowing what to say. The demon gets angry and says that's nothing more than a distraction before preparing a new and powerful attack. Yuma Anno is unfazed and with a confident smile, states that since they are there, he will also join the game. The protagonist finds it all very fun and activates a skill called Playful Spirit on the orb he took. Using the skill, several clones of the young man appear, and he asks the demon which one of them is the real one. The creature is furious, questioning how a human managed to hijack and control a dark legacy. With no other option, Balzafar decides he will simply erase every single one of the clones at once to end this. He concentrates an absurd amount of purple energy, preparing to cast his strongest spell. Next, the enemy fires a beam of pure destruction that heads toward all the Yumas in the room. The attack hits all the clones head-on, but a voice reveals that they were all actually fakes. The real Yuma suddenly appears from behind the armor and asks who failed to see the truth. The young man explains that a spell of that level needs time to be used again, and the illusions were for that. Completely cornered, Balzafar gets extremely angry and calls the protagonist an insolent brat. Yuma Anno turns to the guild leader and says he forgot to bring a weapon to the battle. Without even asking for permission, the young man takes the warrior's spear, who is shocked by the sudden attitude. Next, he uses the mimic skill, which creates a perfect copy of the spear he borrowed. Then our protagonist activates the divine dice skill, which causes different effects depending on the number that lands. The golden dice stops spinning, and the result that appears is the number 5, shining with intense light. With the skill's effect, the copied spear transforms, becoming gigantic and glowing with incredible power. The young adventurer shouts for the demon to prepare himself and throws the giant weapon with all his might. Like a missile, the spear flies at high speed toward Balzafar, who barely has time to react. The attack directly hits a magic barrier the monster created to defend himself at the last second. Even with the defense, the spear pierces the shield and hits the demon's body with a devastating impact. Balzafar is completely shocked to have been defeated by such a trick, and his body fades away. Yuma Anno just calmly watches as the powerful demon disappears into particles of light. With a smile, he comments that the Battle of Illusions was pretty fun, and that fights like this are worth it. The guild leader is left speechless because he thought the young man was just playing around, but he defeated the boss all by himself. Very curious, the warrior wonders what that guy's class is and uses his skill to see his status. On the information window, he discovers that the protagonist's class is Jester, something like a court fool. The man is confused and tells himself he has never heard of a class like that before. The story then goes back to the past and shows the hero working late in a regular office. It is revealed that he was the kind of person who lived a boring and dull life among the others. He didn't know what it meant to have fun or play, and spent his days with an empty expression on his face. He says he awakened the strongest job, and that this is the story of how he will clear all the dungeons. The scene then jumps back 1 year in the past, showing an office building at night under the full moon. Inside, we see a hand typing frantically on the keyboard, showing that someone is working late. This is Yuma Anno in his old life, with a completely exhausted look and not an ounce of joy. Unexpectedly, a coworker appears yelling at him, asking the reason for that miserable face. The man then humiliates him in front of everyone, calling him a useless leech who doesn't meet his targets. Yuma tries to defend himself by saying he works late, but his boss suggests he work on the weekends. With a furious look, the man says that other people's free time is Yuma's chance to get ahead of them. It's explained that his boss exploited him to the maximum and that his name is Yuma Anno and he is 25 years old. His only salvation and escape from that miserable life was an online game called Vanaheim Online. The game was a worldwide success, with 85 million users in just 3 years, becoming a phenomenon. Set in a mythological setting, the game's charm was the NPCs who had stories and seemed alive. The dungeons were full of traps and puzzles that required teamwork, planning, and strategy. But what he liked most was the large number of classes and the flexible character growth system. For him, who lived like a corporate robot, that game was his only refuge from harsh reality. That was the only place where he felt he was truly living and on his own terms. Back home, he has fun playing with his online friends, coordinating attacks against a monster. For the first time, we see the protagonist with a genuine smile on his face, enjoying his time in the game. He truly believed that those moments of happiness and fun could last forever. However, the office, his boss glares at him, saying he saw him playing over the weekend and that he had plenty of time. Yuma is in shock because his boss also plays and even forced him to hand over his phone to check his account. The man then throws the device and says that from that day on, he will work every single weekend. With a wicked smile, the boss says that since he won't be playing anymore, he won't need his items. Desperate, the protagonist begs him not to do that, as his account was more precious than anything. Without mercy, the boss simply deletes the account, and after that moment, Yuma doesn't remember anything else. During the early morning hours, he receives messages from his friends asking why he disappeared from the game's raid. Lying in bed, completely devastated, he thinks that if the world is like this, then it would be better if it just ended. The next morning, even with no motivation at all, he gets ready for another day of work at the office. In front of the building, he reflects on how he became a corporate drone and a company dog. The young man thinks he needs to keep working, because if he doesn't meet his quota again, his salary will be cut. But suddenly, he notices something strange in the environment and is completely confused, not understanding anything. The office has simply transformed into a dungeon, and he wonders what happened to the place. He runs to the main gate but is locked and won't open at all, no matter how hard he tries. At that, a wooden door catches his attention, and he notices it is identical to one from the game Vanaheim Online. This realization throws him into a panic, and a bad feeling begins to take over his body and mind. Suddenly, a bizarre creature emerges from the shadows, and he recognizes it as a monster from the game he loved. The monster then leaps toward him with its sharp claws and teeth, ready to attack without mercy. The creature hits him head-on, and the young man screams, feeling a real and terrible pain coming from the monster's attack. He looks at the wound and is shocked to see he is badly hurt and in real pain, wondering what that is. Understanding the real danger of the situation, Yuma knows that if he doesn't run away from there, he will be taken out by the creature. With that, Yuma Anno starts running desperately down the hallway, trying to escape from that bizarre creature. In his escape, he comes across a fork in the path and needs to make a quick decision to survive. With no time to hesitate, the protagonist chooses one of the paths and runs as fast as he can. He finds a gate and sits down exhausted, believing that for now, he is safe from the monster. Looking back, he remembers that the door was exactly like one from the game Vanaheim Online, and the creature that attacked him was also a monster from there, which leaves him completely confused. He then realizes a terrifying possibility: the game's dungeons have become real. This idea leaves him shocked, and he tries to understand what is happening to his world. Suddenly, a mysterious light illuminates the place, and an ancient book appears floating in front of him. The young man approaches a pedestal where the object landed to get a closer look at what it was. The cover of the book says, "The Thousand Nights of Play by Ludian," something he had never seen before. Picking up the item, he discovers it is the travel diary of an NPC from the game, a completely unseen item. Flipping through the diary, he sees stories about a poisonous mushroom party in the witch's forest. Another page told of a monster fishing tournament to hook a giant fish. There was even a story about how the NPC cheated in a card game and was banned from a guild. Reading those crazy adventures, the protagonist can't help but let out a slight smile. He starts to truly laugh, wondering how there could be someone so free and clueless. Compared to this NPC, he feels pathetic for always obeying his boss without complaining about anything. The young man then feels a deep envy of that character and wishes he could live that way. With tears in his eyes, he wishes with all his might to have a life with much more freedom. Suddenly, the book begins to glow brightly, and a golden light surrounds Yuma Anno's body. He is very confused by the golden particles floating around him, not understanding what that is. A yellow energy takes over his body, and the young man notices that his wounds are healing. Then a message notifies him that he has awakened as a player and obtained the secret class legendary Jester. The protagonist is surprised by his new outfit and understands that he has really become a true player. He opens his status and sees that the Jester class didn't exist in the game, wondering if it's a hidden job. But at that moment, a very loud noise coming from the gate he closed draws his attention to the danger. Yuma Anno realizes that the monster from before managed to follow him there and is now on the other side. He thinks that now he can fight, but he doesn't have any weapon and doesn't know what to do to defend himself. Without warning, the creature manages to break down the wooden gate and charges right at him. The young man knows that if he doesn't defeat the monster, he will perish, and that no one knows the game better than him. With that, he fills his heart with determination and decides that he can and will win that battle. The creature then slowly approaches him, preparing to deliver the final blow and end it all. He then says that if this is really the game, there is a way to fight and grab some rocks from the ground. With a battle cry, the young man throws a single small stone toward the monster to test something. As expected, the creature easily dodges the small projectile and keeps advancing without a problem. The monster then leaps with its claws out, ready to tear the protagonist apart. But Yuma gives a confident smile and says that obviously a pebble like that wouldn't cause any damage. He then opens his other hand and reveals that he actually grabbed a handful of stones, not just one. At that, the young man throws all the stones at once and they hit the monster, causing multiple critical hits. The monster falls to the ground defeated, and Yuma says he already knew, because when looking at his status, his luck was quite high. His attributes show 21 in luck, so if he lands several hits, critical damage is guaranteed. With this, the young man gets an item called Sharp Fragment that increases his attack by 2 points. The protagonist then prepares to use the new item and attacks the monster with all his remaining strength. With a precise strike, he hits the creature squarely in the head, causing another critical and decisive blow. The creature then succumbs to its injuries and its body begins to dissolve into golden light particles. Seeing that he succeeded, the young man celebrates with a smile and tells himself he finally won. Right after, a level up screen appears and his attributes go up, highlighting his luck. Feeling the power flow through his body, he understands that this is the strength of a jester and that he can keep going. With that, the young man faces the main gate and promises he will get out of there alive, no matter what happens. He then assumes that if that is a real dungeon, defeating the boss should open the exit. But at that moment, a mysterious figure suddenly emerges from one of the dungeon side doors. The person who appeared out of nowhere has a very confident smile and a somewhat suspicious look. After that, he was attacked by a few more monsters, but thanks to the levels he gained, it was pretty easy. Since he had already eliminated thousands of those creatures in the game, Yuma knew all their attack patterns. After defeating all the monsters in his path, the protagonist finally reaches the large boss door. However, before he could enter, a familiar voice calls him by name, which leaves him quite surprised. It was the same figure from before, who comments on how the young man seems to be handling the situation very well. Turning around, Yuma is completely shocked and speechless to see who the person that appeared there was. It was his boss, who says he also came to work and got stuck, but that something good came out of it all. Tatsuka brags, saying that by eliminating the monsters, he leveled up and became a level 6 warrior. Our protagonist is completely shocked and afraid of his boss's arrogant and selfish attitude. With that, the man orders Yuma to be the bait in the boss room so he can attack while the monster is distracted. The young man is left speechless and can barely believe what he just heard from the one who is supposed to be his leader. Then the warrior grabs him and yells that when a boss gives an order, the subordinate must simply obey. Without an ounce of mercy, he kicks the young man with all his might, throwing him into the dark boss room. Inside, Yuma is completely terrified and trembling with fear as he faces the darkness of the place. Soon after, a giant and terrifying version of the creature from before appears and stares down the protagonist. The massive creature then lets out a powerful roar, preparing to attack the young man who is all alone. The monster fires a beam of purple energy, and the young man yells his boss's name as he tries to dodge. Outside, the man tells him to hurry up and be taken out because that will lower the monster's guard. He even mocks him, saying that a subordinate's job is to fall for his boss while the monster approaches. The creature attacks with its tail and hits Yuma head on, throwing him far away with a heavy impact. Fallen on the ground, he thinks that even getting stronger, he is still a pawn to his boss and needs to get out of there. But at that moment, a golden light shines, and the young man realizes he cannot watch this tragedy happen. The light then flies toward him and takes the shape of a golden flame while he is on the floor. A mysterious figure appears and says that the protagonist is one of the chosen ones to change the fate of the world. The young adventurer is surprised by the apparition and asks the spirit who he really is. The being of light replies that it doesn't matter, and that the most important thing is that he is now a player. Then the spirit tells him to start having real fun because he will lend his strength for the battle. Outside, the boss finds it strange what is happening inside the giant monster's room. He notices that the dungeon boss has suddenly stopped moving and doesn't understand why. With this, the man gets angry and yells, asking who the young man is talking to, ordering him to be taken down quickly. But Yuma Anno faces his former boss with a serious look full of determination for what is to come. The warrior has no reaction upon seeing this sudden change in attitude of his former subordinate. Facing the man, the protagonist confidently says he is no longer anyone's subordinate. The spirit then tells him to enjoy it more and that he will teach him how to use a real skill. At that moment, the giant monster charges forward to attack the protagonist who is on the ground. Seeing the situation, the mysterious being snaps his fingers and creates a small star of golden energy. The star flies to the monster and hits it, making it stop while a green energy surrounds the young man. The creature is completely stunned by the skill and doesn't understand what just happened. The protagonist is now small and riding on one of the smaller monsters, which looks very confused by the situation. The spirit explains that with this skill, to the boss monster, he looks like one of its minions. With this, the big boss has no reaction and just stares at the scene, not understanding why one of its servants is there. The being of light then says that the monster is ordering him to take out the warrior who is outside. The protagonist is a bit hesitant because, despite everything that happened, that was still his boss. But the spirit scolds him, saying it doesn't matter if he is his boss because titles mean nothing. He then tells the young man to wake up because his adventure starts now and he shouldn't dream about work. Yuma Anno finally understands everything and, with a confident smile, says he is right and that he is a player now. With that, the hero turns to his former boss and declares that from now on he is going to live free. The boss yells, not understanding anything, and tells the young man to stop talking to himself and be finished off by the monster. But Yuma Anno firmly declares that he is no longer his subordinate and that things have changed forever. The warrior gets furious and threatens him, saying he decides his performance review at work. The protagonist then prepares a skill, and a green and yellow energy begins to glow in his hand. This is the bluff skill, which alters the target's perception, being the main ability of a jester. With this, a beam of light hits Tatsuka, who is left completely confused, not understanding what happened. The man panics as his vision starts to get distorted by the young adventurer's magic. In front of him, he sees the image of his own company boss calling him with a scary voice. The illusion then questions him about what he is doing there and why he isn't working as he should be. Totally terrified, the warrior stammers and asks the figure how long it has been standing there. He bows desperately and apologizes, saying that everything is the fault of his subordinate Yuma. The creature then gives an evil smile and with a mocking voice says his tie is crooked. Before he could react, the monster hits him with a powerful punch right in the middle of his face. The blow is so strong that it throws him to the other side of the room, and he screams in pain from the impact. With the force of the attack, the sword he was carrying falls to the floor, showing his total defeat in the fight. Yuma says that even now the man only cares about saving his own skin without caring about anything else. The monster then approaches the fallen warrior, who trembles with fear in the corner of the room with no way out. The creature raises its sharp claw, preparing to deliver the final blow and finish him off. With tears in his eyes, the man faces his end up close and is completely paralyzed by fear. But the protagonist steps in front and says there is no need for his former boss to perish there. The spirit comments on the young man's major personality change and says it didn't turn out bad at all. Seeing that, the boss despairs and admits he was wrong while begging for Yuma Anno's help. But the protagonist simply tells the man coldly to disappear from his sight and go far away. Without thinking twice, the warrior runs away desperately from that terrifying room. Now with the problem solved, our hero turns to the large creature and prepares his final attack. The young man then charges forward toward the dungeon boss to finally end the fight. With a battle cry and glowing eyes, he unleashes a powerful strike with the sword he took earlier. The blade then shines brightly with a golden energy and slices the giant monster without difficulty. The being of light congratulates him on the victory, saying he successfully defeated the dungeon boss. At that, several screens appear and notify him that he leveled up to level 5 and unlocked the mimic skill. Suddenly, the entire dungeon scenery begins to dissolve into thousands of light particles. Then he realizes he has returned to the real world and is on the street in front of his old office. With a relieved smile, the young man tells himself he finally managed to get out of that place. But at that moment, he notices something strange and sees the reflection of flying creatures in his eyes. Looking up, the protagonist sees several dragon-like monsters flying between the buildings. A large screen in the city shows breaking news about the unbelievable situation unfolding. The news reports that all over the world, monsters in dungeons have suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Furthermore, a new continent has emerged in the sea, and monsters that don't exist in games have been spotted. A warning on the screen asks everyone to stay calm while people look up at the sky. The crowd panics, wondering what those monsters were and what would happen to the world. But Yuma observes everything and comments that with dungeons and continents, things just got interesting. The spirit then says he is finally showing a good expression and that it was expected of him. The young man turns to the being of light and thanks him for saving him before asking who he is. The small creature then introduces himself as Rudian and says he is just a jester. The protagonist is completely shocked because Rudian was the name of the author of the book he read. Rudian says that complaining won't change anything, so they should enjoy the situation, and questions him. The young adventurer thinks for a moment about what he will do from now on with this new reality. At that, he looks at a giant tower and says he knows that dungeon because he saw it before in the game. With a confident smile and a determined look, he seems to have a plan in mind for the future. Looking at the dungeon entrance, he says he just had a great idea to start his journey. He thinks that if he goes there now, he might be able to do something he always wanted to in the game. Something he considers very fun while staring at the tutorial goddess statue. In front of the tower gate, the young adventurer reveals that this is the tutorial dungeon. His companion then questions him about what they are doing in that beginner's place. Yuma explains that inside there is a sealed room with a very special treasure chest. The young man reveals that the item is known as the goddess's secret treasure, and Rudian gets curious. Since the game launched, no one has managed to get it because you can't enter the secret room. Our protagonist says that legendary item chest has bothered him for a long time and he wants it. With a smile, he claims he now has a way to open the chest and will show how. Rudian understands that the world has become his playground and tells the boy to have as much fun as he wants. With that, the spirit says he is going to take a nap and slowly begins to disappear from the area. The young man complains that his companion appears and vanishes whenever he pleases without even a warning. Entering the place, a screen notifies him that this is the beginner's labyrinth for new players. Inside, the young man comes across the large goddess statue he expected to find. The statue then comes to life, and a woman welcomes the player to guide him. Yuma Anno is surprised and notices that her lines are exactly the same as in the game. The goddess tells him to learn how to fight and find the way to the exit of that dungeon. Next, she offers her blessing to accompany him on his journey that begins now. The protagonist thinks that seeing her in person, she really seems to be a divine figure. With a smile on his face, he adjusts his hat, getting ready for what comes next. The woman says that in front of him is his status screen, but the young man is already walking. She continues explaining about HP and MP and asks him to pay attention to what she says. The goddess tells him to open the chest in front of him, but realizes he has already done it without waiting. He complains that he only got a copper sword, and she asks for a little more gratitude. Suddenly, a fire elemental creature appears out of nowhere and stares at the protagonist. With a serious expression, the goddess simply warns that an enemy has appeared in front of him. The fire monster floats, and the woman tells him to ready his weapon and focus on the fight. But the young man defeats it with a single strike, and she complains that he could have struggled a bit. Still, the goddess congratulates him for defeating his first enemy and continues the guide. With his sword in hand, the young adventurer calmly waits for the next step of the tutorial. With that in mind, he grips his sword more firmly and prepares for his plan. Without warning, he starts attacking the dungeon walls, leaving the goddess shocked. The young man continues his strikes and destroys the pillars of the place without stopping. With several cross slashes, he breaks the sacred walls one by one without hesitation. The woman becomes furious and yells, asking what he thinks he is doing there. He thinks it's good that she is mad, because if he provokes her a little more, he'll get it. The hidden raid boss, the goddess of dark fury at level 10, should appear. He knows that when she gets consumed by anger, the goddess transforms into her dark version. The young adventurer notes that seeing them in person, the two versions look very similar. He remembers that upon being defeated, she says she finally escaped the eternal prison, and that the dropped item is the crown of thorns, which serves as a key to the secret room. With this, he understands that the eternal prison was actually the tutorial dungeon itself. The protagonist then turns around and asks the woman if she knows anything about the chest. She changes the subject and tries to return to the tutorial to talk about skills. But without hesitation, Yuma Anno directly attacks her with his sword to provoke her more. Seeing his attitude, the goddess flashes an evil smile full of contained rage. She transforms and yells, ordering the brat to listen to her while she speaks. With a satisfied smile, the young man thinks she finally appeared as he predicted. He deduces that anyone would go crazy repeating the same tutorial every single day. The dark goddess glares at him with hatred and says he won't get away with irritating her. Next, she charges forward with incredible speed and attacks the protagonist with everything. The young man manages to block the first strike at the last second using his sword. The two then exchange several fast blows in an intense battle full of sparks. Even while defending, he notices her strength and realizes he is in trouble at his current level. The goddess prepares her next attack with her sharp claws full of dark power. She flies toward him ready to tear him apart with a single movement. The young man is shocked by her speed and realizes he can't dodge in time. With that, he takes a direct hit from the goddess's attack, and his body is severely wounded. The impact of the blow is so strong that his sword is knocked far away from his hand. The dark goddess laughs and says that was amazing, and she waited a long time to do that. Shouting in anger, she reveals that she was forced to do the same tutorial over 80 million times. The dark goddess recovers from the attack but notices that something is very wrong with the situation. She stares at the young man and is confused to see him standing and completely unharmed from her strike. With a smile, Yuma was lucky his bluff skill activated just in time to save him. In his hand, he holds the crown of thorns he managed to grab during the chaos of the fight. The goddess panics and wonders when he managed to take that item from her without her seeing. But the young adventurer just stretches and comments on how that whole fight was fun. Then he adjusts his hat and says he is going to get the goddess's secret treasure for himself now. With that, our protagonist turns around and walks through the large sealed door of the room. Holding the crown with both hands, the item begins to glow with an intense golden light. The crown of thorns acts as a key, and the large gate finally begins to open. The young man celebrates with a victorious smile as the treasure door finally opens. His eyes shine with the anticipation of finally seeing what is inside the secret room. Inside, he finds the legendary treasure chest glowing with a powerful golden light. He approaches and wonders what could be inside the goddess's secret treasure. Without hesitation, the young adventurer reaches out his hand and opens the chest to take the valuable item. He obtains the goddess's blessing ring, which recovers all his HP once when he is near the end. The protagonist celebrates happily because he got a truly insane legendary item. Looking at the ring in his hand, he notices something strange and is a little confused. The young man holds the item up to his eye to see better what was happening there. Then the scene changes and shows the goddess lying on the floor in the deepest part of the dungeon. Gradually, she begins to wake up and lets out a groan of pain as she regains consciousness. Sitting up, the woman looks around completely lost, not knowing where she is at that moment. She then looks at her own hands and seems to remember something important suddenly. The goddess remembers that she lost control of her anger and ended up attacking the player with everything she had. But at that moment, she notices something strange and her attention is drawn to a noise. The protagonist is swimming in a fountain nearby and greets her, saying she woke up. Completely shocked and furious, the goddess yells, asking what he thinks he is doing. The young man says he always wanted to swim in that fountain and that it feels great on his body. She then looks to the side and notices that the treasure pedestal is now completely empty. The woman stares at the young man in the fountain and the empty pedestal, wondering what happened. Then she approaches and sees that the treasure chest is still there, intact as before. Opening the item, she wonders why, even though he opened the room, the treasure is still there. The young man explains he figured it was something she had kept for a long time and didn't take it. He comments that the ring is quite old but was so well taken care of that it almost fooled him. The goddess is left completely speechless and just stares at the young man with a serious expression. Suddenly, a memory comes to her mind showing a temple on a sunny day. A divine statue was creating a sacred relic with a mysterious and golden power. The three goddesses celebrated happily for having obtained a special blessing ring. With the rings on their fingers, the three friends felt connected in a unique way. One of them suggests that they wear the rings and go play all over the world together. She remembers when she was free and wore that ring, but decided to keep it away forever. The goddess thought she would never put it on again, and that is why she hid it in the room. The protagonist then asks her if she really was trapped in the tutorial forever. He says he understands how hard that is because he was also a corporate drone. Hearing that, the woman is surprised and looks at the young man differently. The young man opens his arms and says that maybe it would be good to try to have a little fun. He suggests creating secret passages, giving it a new look, or sneaking away once in a while. With a simple gesture, he shows that whatever she wants to do is valid. With a gentle smile, he tells her she no longer needs to stay chained to that place. Touched by his words, the goddess looks at him with a thoughtful and serene expression. A slight smile appears on her face, and she agrees, saying he's right. The woman then says she would like him to keep the ring as a gift from her. The young man is hesitant, but she insists, saying it's completely fine for him to accept. She explains that he helped her realize something important and wants him to take the item. Sitting on the steps, the protagonist says he will drop by to play with her again. He remembers the situation and asks why the world ended like that all of a sudden. The goddess turns around and answers honestly that she doesn't know the reason either. She says she heard a voice in her head, and when she woke up, she was in this world. The young adventurer processes the information and thanks her for the help and the chat. With a smile, Yuma says that for now, he will simply try to enjoy everything. The goddess smiles back and says she will also try to have a little more fun. A few days later, three adventurers arrive at the dungeon and wonder what that is. A sign says the goddess is out and leaves instructions for newbies to manage on their own. The adventurers are left clueless and complain that this goddess is very clueless. From afar, our protagonist and his companion observe the scene with a satisfied look. Rudian comments that things seem to be working out, and Yuma wonders about his next destination. The young man then remembers the news and decides that his first destination will be the new continent. Just thinking about the adventures awaiting him gets the young adventurer very excited. Rudian says that's the spirit and tells him to have fun because the world is waiting for him. With a genuine smile on his face, the protagonist agrees with his companion's words. But suddenly he feels his pocket vibrate and is a little confused about what it could be. Picking up his phone, he sees it's a call from Suwa, one of his old friends from the game. On the other end of the line, a desperate voice begs for Yuma's help and leaves him tense. He answers in shock and asks what happened, and his friend says he entered a dungeon. Suwa explains he is trapped, unable to move, and that if he stays like this, he will perish. Without thinking twice, the young man starts running and says he is already on his way to help him. It is revealed that Suwa was his gaming partner and a hardcore player among the best. Because of this, the protagonist finds it strange that he is having trouble in a beginner dungeon. He wonders what on earth happened to his friend for him to be so desperate. Arriving at the location, he jumps in and confirms it is indeed a newbie dungeon. The young man runs and thinks the monsters there shouldn't be strong, so the mystery deepens. Rudian appears and asks the reason for the rush, and Yuma says his friend needs help. The spirit reflects that even with the world changing, some bonds of friendship remain. While his companion speaks, the protagonist is focused on finding his friend in danger. With a worried look, he continues searching for any sign of his gaming partner. Then he finally spots Sua huddled in a corner and yells to get his attention. The young man runs to his friend and asks if he is okay, while the other looks terrified. Upon seeing Yuma, his friend is very relieved and thanks him for coming so quickly. The protagonist asks what happened, and Sua says he thought it would be easy but was wrong. The young adventurer asks if some different monster appeared since the world changed. But his friend denies it and grips his own arm with an expression of pain and discomfort. With the negative answer, Yuma is even more confused, not understanding what the problem is. He then says they should go to the exit and clear the dungeon together like old times. A memory from the game shows Sua as a tank holding a monster and yelling for Yuma. With perfect teamwork, Yuma attacks the creature while his friend holds it down. The two celebrate their victory in the game and remember how well they played together for a long time. Back in the present, the protagonist says that clearing a dungeon, just the two of them, feels like the game. But at that moment, Sua notices something and his attention is drawn to an object on the floor. He points and shows his friend that he found a treasure chest on the way. Wasting no time, the young man approaches the chest and opens it to see what's inside. The reward is a longsword plus a +1 enhancement enchantment item. Yuma praises the item and comments on how low-level gear can outperform high-tier ones. His friend agrees happily and says that with that new sword, he will be able to fight better. The chest also had copper sand, and the protagonist says he will keep the materials. He explains that he likes keeping them because they are smooth and shiny even without much value. But suddenly a giant shadow appears and the two realize they are not alone. From the shadows, a small creature with horns and an evil look appears and stares at them. Sua is completely paralyzed with fear upon seeing the monster in front of him. Yuma then takes a stance and tells his friend to leave it to him as he advances for the fight. Sua thanks him, but Yuma notices his friend is strangely weak and gets confused. The protagonist understands something is wrong and wonders what happened to his partner. The two then reach the large boss door, and Sua confirms that is the final room. Yuma says that upon defeating the monster, they can get out of there and asks if his friend is ready to fight. As soon as the door opens, a large monster with crab claws appears in front of them. The creature lets out a terrifying roar while staring down the two adventurers with its glowing eyes. Completely terrified, Sua screams in fear and can barely hold the sword with his hands. But he tries to encourage himself and says that this time, with that new weapon, he can fight. With a battle cry, the young man charges alone toward the large labyrinth monster. Seeing his reckless attitude, Yuma yells for his friend to wait and not attack like that. Ignoring the warning, Sua keeps running and yelling while preparing his attack with the sword. The monster then reacts to the attack and prepares a fast and powerful strike with its large claw. With a single blow, the creature hits the weapon directly and Sua's sword shatters to pieces. The young man is left completely shocked and unable to react upon seeing his only weapon destroyed. With no time to think, the monster takes the chance and prepares to attack the defenseless young man. Desperate, Yuma yells for his friend to be careful because the creature's attack is coming. The protagonist then acts fast and jumps in front of the monster to defend his partner. He knocks the monster away and asks Sua if he is okay while the young man is on the floor. Fallen and crying, the friend says his sword broke and that now he will surely be finished. Yuma then kneels down and asks what's wrong since they always fought well together. But Sua yells in despair and confesses that the real problem is that he is too afraid. The protagonist is completely surprised and speechless by his partner's confession. He explains he thought it would be like in the game, but reality is completely different and terrifying. Sua says the monsters are huge, reek of bodily fluids, and are much scarier. The young man goes on to explain that even the equipment is heavy and difficult to use. He remembers the real pain he felt and says that when hit, it really hurts, unlike the game. Sua ends by saying everything is different and he can't fight because of fear. While he speaks, the monster approaches, and Yuma thinks the situation has gotten quite dangerous. Seeing the threat, the protagonist stands up and readies his sword, determined to resolve this. He then grabs the copper sand he saved earlier and throws it hard toward the monster. The sand hits the creature and distracts it, so Yuma tells his friend he will handle everything. Our protagonist tells Sua to go to a safe place while he takes care of the large creature. Rudian then appears and comments on the tactic of using trash as a distraction to save his friend. With a smile, the spirit says he likes that playful fighting style full of tricks. Yuma then uses the distraction and advances to attack the monster with his copper sword. But upon landing the blow, he realizes the enemy is much tougher than he previously thought. The sword fails to pierce the shell, and the young man understands a copper weapon won't work. Rudian comments that he is in more trouble than he thought and asks how he will win. The protagonist then analyzes the monster, noticing its thick armor and sharp pincers. With a plan in mind, his hand begins to glow, and he thinks that skill might work. With this, the young adventurer charges toward the large monster to use his skill. His friend panics and yells for him not to get close, saying if he gets near he will be taken down. But Yuma just tells him to watch while the ring on his hand begins to glow with a golden light. He then approaches and touches the monster's claw with his glowing hand to activate his skill. The protagonist smiles and activates his mimic skill with a shout to copy the creature's power. A screen explains that the skill temporarily copies the target's abilities for a short period. The young man then thinks that if a steel sword can't pierce that hard shell, he has a plan. With a confident smile, he says he will use the weapons the monster already has and transforms. The creature is completely confused to see its opponent now has claws just like its own. Yuma then uses the copied claws to attack the monster's shell with all his might. The strike works, and he manages to break part of the creature's shell, leaving it vulnerable. But the young man complains that 15 seconds of the skill isn't enough time for the fight. Angered, the monster attacks him, and the young adventurer sees that the creature left its chest exposed. He understands that this is the weak point, and that if he lands a single blow there, he can win. The protagonist dodges the attack and prepares to deliver the final blow to the enraged creature. With a battle cry, he charges forward with everything to strike the monster's weak point. The attack hits directly, and the monster is defeated with a single precise and powerful blow. Suwa is completely shocked to see that the monster was defeated in such a way. Rudian comments he was going to give advice, but that the young man handled everything on his own. The spirit says he has already learned how to fight like a jester, and Yuma sighs in relief. With a satisfied smile, he adjusts his hat and tells himself that everything worked out. With this, the dungeon is cleared, and he goes up to level 9 and unlocks a new skill. Then the dungeon fades away and the two friends finally return to the real world. Suwa falls to his knees relieved, and Yuma says he is glad they made it out of that place. The protagonist tries to cheer up his friend, but he interrupts him and says he has given up on being a player. Yuma is completely surprised and speechless upon hearing his gaming partner's decision. He asks the reason and reminds him they have been in this adventure together since the very beginning. A memory shows the two having fun in the game and saying they would be fine together. But back in the present, Suwa says with a sad expression that he is still too scared. He explains that fight made it clear to him that he can no longer fight for real. The protagonist has no reaction and just watches his friend with a sad expression on his face. Suwa says that seeing his friend fight cheered him up and that he seemed to be having a lot of fun. He then says he will pass the time with other games since Vanaheim is offline. Yuma understands his friend's decision and nods his head in agreement, even though he is a bit sad. Suwa then asks what his plans are, and the young man says he is heading to the new continent. The protagonist gets very excited and says that just thinking about it makes his heart race. The friend mentions that area didn't even exist in the game, and that he saw an article about an exploration team. An image shows a recruitment flyer for a research team for the new continent. Yuma is interested, and Suwa asks him not to go risk himself and end up getting hurt. The young adventurer smiles and agrees with a fist bump before his friend leaves. Yuma then searches on his phone and finds the article his friend mentioned about the expedition. The news reveals that several players have already announced they will join, including a famous guild. Government-approved guilds are also competing for a spot on the exploration team. The requirement to apply is to be level 15 or higher, so Yuma understands he needs to level up. He also thinks that to pass the test, he will need very strong and powerful equipment. With that, he decides to go to a treasure vault-type dungeon to get both. Seeing that the deadline is in just 2 days, the protagonist knows he needs to hurry a lot. The scene then shifts and shows the sign of a large company called Takajo Corporation. Inside the building, we see several people in a meeting room facing a man at the front. This is Takajo Shoya, the guild master of Glorious Falcon, and he is going to announce the 2 worst members. Hearing that, all the guild members present in the room become visibly tense and worried. On a list, he points to the names of Akiyama and Yoshi, calling the 2 up front. Without a shred of remorse, the man announces that the 2 are expelled from the guild and the company. The 2 men are completely shocked and desperate, not knowing what they will do now. The master explains that their numbers for material collection and defeated monsters are terrible. He further humiliates them, saying there are many people wanting their spot and they won't be missed. With a cold look, the man states that if they cannot contribute, then they are just useless trash. He then turns to the rest of the group and warns them not to get too comfortable in their positions. To be chosen, they need to give it their all in the next invasion of the treasure vault. One of the girls squeezes the paper in her hand and angrily thinks that she got 3rd place. Even sacrificing her sleep and pushing herself to the limit, she only managed the 3rd position. With this, the woman decides she needs to try even harder to achieve her goal. Takajo observes his members and thinks that in times of chaos, whoever acts first takes control. He asserts to himself that all of this is for the sake of the ideal he wishes to achieve in the future. Back to Yuma, he reads that Tapajo's company is going fully into the dungeon business. The young man discovers he is one of the top players of Vanaheim and the president of a company. Arriving at the treasure dungeon, the protagonist notices there are already many people at the location. Suddenly, he notices something in the middle of the crowd and his gaze focuses on a specific spot. The young adventurer recognizes those creatures as treasure hunter zombies. He knows that unless their heads are shattered, they keep getting back up constantly. At that moment, the head of one of the zombies is completely destroyed by an accurate shot. The blonde woman from before is holding a huge weapon and seems quite calm about the situation. With a cold expression, she comments that she still has many others to take down in that place. Yuma notices a zombie approaching her from behind and yells for the woman to watch out. Before the creature can reach her, the young man acts quickly and slices the zombie in half with his sword. The adventurer is completely surprised by the sudden intervention of the young man. After landing, the protagonist turns to her and asks if she is okay and didn't get hurt. But the woman is furious and yells at him not to steal her takedowns because she has a quota. The protagonist doesn't understand anything and just stares at her with an expression of pure confusion. She's Natsume Najika from the Glorious Falcon Guild and says it is a critical moment for her goal. The young man tries to explain he wasn't stealing and that he was actually trying to help the girl, but one of the guild members yells for Natsume to hurry up, and she replies that she is coming. Yuma thinks that even becoming players, they are still chasing targets just like at work. Rudian then appears and asks if he isn't in a hurry, but the young man says he is going to enjoy the dungeon. The protagonist stares at a torch on the wall and comments on how he can feel the history of the place. He says he wanted to enjoy that, and if he misses the deadline, he will figure out a way later. With a smile, the spirit comments that his partner has really grown and become a true jester. Further ahead, the guild advances down a hallway while several zombies watch them from the shadows. Natsume warns there are enemies ahead and says she will hold them off while readying her weapon. One of the members says their target is 10 weapons, and they will clear out all the monsters there. From afar, the archer notices Yuma is just strolling through the dungeon without a care. Our protagonist admires the atmosphere and says he loves the smell of rust and ancient torches. But suddenly, he notices something strange on the ground, and his expression changes completely. The young man then kneels down to investigate, and Rudian asks what he is doing there on the floor. With a smile, Yuma says the secret of that dungeon is something no one has noticed yet. He points and reveals that in fact, there is a secret hidden treasure room right there. The guild finds several chests and celebrates obtaining items like an upgraded hammer and bow. One of the adventurers opens another one of the chests with high expectations of finding something good. However, he is disappointed to find only a small, crooked dagger with no apparent value. The man complains that it is trash and throws the weapon away while Yuma watches from afar. With a greeting, the protagonist runs over and picks up the dagger that was tossed by the other player. A notification screen then lets him know he obtained the item called Crooked Dagger in his inventory. Holding the item, he comments on how the dagger has an interesting shape and could be quite useful. The guild members mock him, saying they'd rather fight unarmed than use that. They also say the good weapons go to whoever gets them first, and that the boss's weapons belong to them. Yuma stares at the dagger and thinks that a useless weapon solely depends on how it's used in battle. Further ahead, the other players keep fighting against the hordes of zombies in the dungeon. The young adventurer then tests his new weapon and slices one of the zombies in half effortlessly. He notices the dagger's weight is shifted, and that actually makes it pretty cool to use. The guild reaches a large gate, and one of them says that is the boss room and they are getting the loot. But upon approaching, one of the members gets caught in a bear trap and is stuck to the ground. Natsume yells out to her companions while they also get caught in other traps. One of the men screams in desperation and begs for the archer's help to get out of that situation. The girl agrees and says there must be some switch to deactivate the traps nearby. Suddenly, her eyes focus on something moving, and she realizes they are not alone there. Out of nowhere, a large stone guardian appears and prepares to attack the trapped players. Natsume understands that creature is protecting the boss and they need to defeat it. Without hesitation, the archer readies her bow and shoots a powerful arrow toward the guardian. The attack hits the monster head, but doesn't even leave a scratch on its stone armor. The adventurer is completely shocked and has no reaction upon seeing her attack didn't work. A voice explains that the guardian was built for defense, which is why it's so resistant to attacks. Natsume is frustrated because her weapon lacks the firepower to take down the monster, and she doesn't know what to do. She then notices the switch to deactivate the trap is located behind the creature. Yuma appears out of nowhere and asks the girl if he just needs to hit that switch on the monster's back. With a confident smile and holding his crooked dagger, the young man tells the archer to leave it to him. One of the guild members yells that he is crazy and can't do anything with that useless weapon. Rudian then appears and comments that brats don't understand anything, and the protagonist agrees. The young adventurer says that even that weapon has its uses as the dagger begins to glow. The crooked dagger transforms into a boomerang that seeks its target and always returns to its owner. Natsume is completely shocked to see the weapon's transformation and the young man's skill. The guild member also can't believe what he is seeing and is speechless at the scene. With a smile, Yuma tells the weapon to show what it can do and prepares to throw the boomerang. He throws the weapon, which flies in a perfect arc, hits the switch, and strikes the guardian right after. Upon impact, the stone guardian shatters into pieces and falls to the ground completely defeated. With the switch activated, the trap disengages, and the guild member is finally free on the ground. The archer is speechless as she realizes he hit the switch and defeated the guardian at the same time. He then says he figured there would be traps as he catches the boomerang returning to his hand. The young man explains that's why he was checking everything along the way while walking through the dungeon. With a smile, he says even useless weapons deserve a chance and that now only the boss is left. Meanwhile, the guild members who were caught in the trap are lying injured on the floor. Natsume runs up to them, and one of the men complains they got caught in a trap one step away from the boss. He punches the floor and says if they fail the mission, they will be kicked out of the guild with no second chance. The adventurer panics because he knows if he is kicked out, he won't have anywhere to go in that world. But one of them says it isn't over yet, and they will meet the quota no matter what happens. However, the young man feels a sharp pain and realizes his injuries are worse than he thought. Natsume warns him he can't move with those wounds, or the situation will get much worse. Seeing the situation, she thinks that if necessary, she'll have to face the dungeon boss alone. With determination, the archer says to leave it to her, and that she will defeat the boss even by herself. With no other choice, the other guild members agree and say they are counting on her to win. The adventurer then agrees and tells herself that no matter what happens, she will follow her ideal. From afar, the protagonist observes the whole scene of the injured guild members on the floor. He picks up one of the traps and comments on how dangerous it is, but that no one was badly hurt. The young adventurer then approaches the archer and asks what she thinks she is doing there. The girl turns and tells him they are risking their lives to achieve their goals. With a serious look, she tells the young man not to get in her way because she has something to accomplish. The protagonist then asks if it's because of the quota, and she says quotas are just a means to an end. The archer explains they are all looking toward the ideal that lies beyond those simple targets. Hearing that, Yuma remembers his old company and how his boss was always talking about ideals. In front of the boss door, Natsume says she cannot falter and must keep moving forward. The adventurer then remembers the ideal Takajo gave her to build a completely new world. Determined, the archer says she will answer that ideal with everything she has and readies herself. Yuma recognizes Tajo from the news and remembers her guild as the Glorious Falcon. He thinks this level of devotion is strange and recalls that in his old company, nobody liked what they did. The two then enter the boss room, and the gate closes behind them with a loud noise. Inside the room, a huge guardian with a glowing eye and a scythe appears to confront them. The creature glares at the two adventurers with a threatening look, preparing to attack. The protagonist explains that is a treasure guardian animated by ancient magic. The adventurer understands they need to dodge all the traps while fighting the monster. The guardian then attacks with a golden falcon statue that flies at high speed. Natsume leaps to dodge the attack and prepares to counterattack with her bow and arrow. In midair, the archer aims precisely and readies her shot at the large monster. The arrow hits the guardian squarely in the shoulder, but the attack deals no real damage. She dodges a spike attack and complains she can't aim properly with so many obstacles. The girl then asks Yuma to help her attack, but he says he cannot do that. He explains that with so many traps, his boomerang's trajectory would be thrown off. With that, the young man says if they want to win, he will have to use another method, but he needs an opening. He thinks the traps don't stop and the boss has many attacks, wondering if he can do it. Natsume gets annoyed with the young man and asks what he is mumbling about at a time like this. But suddenly, the guardian appears behind her and prepares to attack with its spiked weapon. The blow hits the ground hard, and the force of the impact throws the archer far away. Fallen on the ground, she complains about the absurd power of that monster while trying to get up. The guardian slowly approaches her, and the adventurer knows she needs to do something fast. With a determined expression, she stands up and gets ready to fight even while injured. The monster then raises its fist, preparing to deliver the final strike and end the fight. But before it could attack, Yuma suddenly appears and saves her at the last second. The girl is furious and yells at him not to get in her way because she needs to fight. The protagonist just stares at her with a serious look and says she needs to fight for the ideal. Then he tosses her away and tells her to let him handle the guardian by himself. The young adventurer throws his cape to distract the monster and create an opening for his attack. Seeing the opening, the young man understands that is his only chance to win the battle. He grabs the archer's hand, and she asks what he is doing at a time like that. With this, the two jump together, and Yuma uses her as a foothold to leap toward the monster. The adventurer yells and asks why they are running, and the young man says she can still fight. Rudian laughs and comments she still hasn't understood the plan, and the protagonist tells her to relax. Yuma carries her toward the room's exit, while the guardian watches them with a furious look. The monster then begins to chase after the two with an impressive and terrifying speed. Natsume yells that the creature is coming after them, and the young man says that was exactly what he wanted. He explains that Guardian relentlessly chases anyone who tries to take the treasure. With a confident smile, the protagonist says that means something very important for his plan. Suddenly, a large treasure chest appears and the monster runs toward it to protect it. The adventurer is completely shocked to see the young man's tactic actually worked. The monster is then caught off guard by several traps, and Yuma explains he modified them earlier. He had collected the bear traps that snagged the guild members and repositioned them. With a confident smile, the young man says it's an eye for an eye, and he would use traps against the boss. Our protagonist reveals that the creature draws all its magic from that single glowing eye. He says it will be tough, but if they attack together they can win, and Natsume agrees to follow his plan. With this in mind, the two adventurers begin to focus a large amount of energy into their hands. Then, both fire powerful beams of golden energy that fly toward the creature. Yuma stays focused on the attack, hoping his plan will finally work against the Guardian. Natsume also maintains her concentration, determined to hit her quota and help her guild win. The two energy beams fly at high speed, and the two yell as they close in. Rudian pops up complaining Yuma is in his way, but the young man says it was him who got in front. While they argue, the giant guardian approaches the spot where the two attacks are about to collide. The creature runs so fast that the ground beneath its feet starts cracking under the pressure of its steps. Seeing the perfect moment, the protagonist yells for Natsume to act at that exact second for the attack. The archer then aims her weapon and says she's got it as she prepares her final and decisive shot. With perfect coordination, the combined attacks strike the Guardian's eye with incredible force. The creature cannot withstand the powerful blow, and its stone body begins to shatter to pieces. With the battle finally over, Yuma lets out a sigh of relief while Natsume looks exhausted. Rudian comments he can't tell if the two have great or terrible chemistry for fighting together. A notification screen pops up, and the young man is very happy to see he leveled up from level 11 to 15. He celebrates because now he meets the requirements to join the new continent exploration team. But suddenly, a green orb of light appears floating in front of him after the boss was defeated. The protagonist stares at the mysterious light, completely surprised by its sudden appearance there. He then wonders if that could be a rare drop item, and Natsume also looks surprised. The item is a spell-piercing rapier, which ignores defense and deals triple damage to inorganic creatures. Yuma is thrilled and says his Jester luck finally paid off with that legendary weapon. Meanwhile, Natsume remembers the chest in the boss room and decides it's better to go check what's inside. The archer then runs to the room where the treasure chest is located to claim her reward. She finds the chest and opens it quickly, hoping to find something valuable to help her guild's mission. Inside, she finds an upgraded Morning Star, which is a powerful spiked mace. The adventurer is very happy because that was the 10th weapon, and she finally met her goal. Next, she turns to Yuma and thanks him because with his help, she managed to complete her task. The protagonist then asks if she had fun during the fight, leaving the girl completely confused. He explains that using the dungeon's traps against the boss was a thrilling experience for him. The girl thinks about his words and wonders if her heart was truly racing during the battle. With a friendly gesture, he tells her she should try to relax and loosen up a bit more. The young adventurer says with a smile that sometimes it is good to just have fun and enjoy the moment. With that said, he waves goodbye and says he'll see her around before leaving the dungeon. Natsume thinks about freedom but reaffirms that she lives only for Takajo's ideal and doesn't need that. She reflects that she never imagined anyone fighting like that and becomes thoughtful about the situation. The scene then shifts and shows the office of the Glorious Falcon Guild president for a meeting. Takajo congratulates her on meeting the target, but warns her not to slack off with the results she got. He then orders her to pass the new continent selection test with no excuses. The man also orders the archer to keep an eye on the court fool, because he might be useful. With a serious and determined look, the adventurer agrees to her master's orders without hesitation. A few days later, we see the venue for the new continent exploration team selection exam. Amidst the crowd, the protagonist is excited and says he absolutely cannot lose. On stage, an examiner announces the start of the test for all the elite players present there. He explains that with the appearance of the dungeons, the world now faces an unprecedented crisis. Furthermore, a new and mysterious continent has emerged, something not even the game Vanaheim Online had. The man warns the place is dangerous, and they don't know what kind of people or creatures live there. Therefore, they will select only 10 individuals with top-tier minds, bodies, and skills. The test will be divided into 3 parts: a written exam, a gathering test, and a simulated battle. To start, he says everyone needs to form duos, and that the exam begins with choosing a partner. Our protagonist is surprised, not expecting he would need to find a partner right then and there. The man then gives them 5 minutes to form duos, and whoever fails will be disqualified. The young man knows the choice is important, but he has no time to lose and starts running to find someone. With this, he approaches a small adventurer with a backpack to try and team up. With a smile on his face, the young man introduces himself and asks if the other player wants to team up with him. The adventurer named Arumi analyzes him and says a court fool is no good as a partner for him. Without thinking twice, the small player ignores our hero and goes to ask someone else for his team. The protagonist then tries to find someone else in the crowd, and his eyes focus on a blonde man. But the man rejects him arrogantly and tells him not to talk like they are equals. The protagonist is left speechless when he sees the other player was recording everything with a video camera. This is Shimada Kippi, and he mocks the young man's class, asking what a court fool is supposed to be. Yuma gets quite discouraged by the situation, and an announcement reveals there is only 1 minute left. He thinks it would be pathetic to get eliminated for not finding a partner, but he can't pick just anyone. But suddenly, a familiar voice comes from behind him and asks if he would like to team up. Turning around, the young adventurer sees the person who called him as the archer he met earlier. He recognizes her and she introduces herself as Natsume Nijika from the Glorious Falcon Guild to form the team. With this, the two form a duo, and the young man is relieved to have narrowly avoided being disqualified. With a smile, he extends his hand and says he is looking forward to working with her during the test. Next, the two turn and start walking together, getting ready for the start of the exam. But the young man is a little confused by the cold and distant expression of his new partner. She then says she isn't there to make friends, and that she will use him during the test if she can. The adventurer runs ahead and reaffirms that she will do everything for her master Takajo's ideal. The scene then shifts to the first part of the test, which is the dreaded written exam for all players. Our protagonist seems to be struggling a lot and looks thoughtful while chewing on his pencil. With a look of pure frustration, the young man grips his pencil tightly, not knowing what to do on the test. Meanwhile, his partner watches him closely, looking a bit disappointed in him. After the test, the examiner prepares to announce the results and who passed to the next phase. Yuma is very nervous waiting for his name, and Natsume looks confident about her own result. But to his relief, the young man's name appears in the 19th position, meaning he barely passed. Natsume is shocked and doesn't understand how they ranked in 19th place as she scored over 90. The girl complains the test had things she had never seen, and Yuma is confused by her reaction. Embarrassed, he admits he just picked the options that seemed the most fun and apologizes. On the ranking list, the names Kuriya Soma and Shino Aizui appear in first place. All the other participants look at the duo with admiration and surprise at the result. Natsume recognizes them as the famous Crimson Blade duo and notes there are rumors of sponsorships. The two warriors look very confident and comment they also took first in the exam. Seeing that, the archer tells the protagonist they cannot let their guard down for the next test. The young man just smiles and tells her to relax a bit, as they don't need to risk their lives like that. The second part of the test is a gathering test, and the players are taken to a cave. The examiner explains the layout of the Cave of Forgotten Time distorts one's sense of direction and time. Everyone's mission is to gather 3 gems that naturally form in the cave within 2 hours. However, the man warns everyone to stay alert as they prepare to enter the dungeon. He reveals the cave has become a monster nest and everyone must prepare to fight. With the warning given, all the adventurers prepare to enter the cave and start the test. Inside, our protagonist and his partner find one of the gems stuck in a wall. With the first gem in hand, Yuma celebrates the good start and says they only need 2 more. Natsume tells them to hurry to find the rest while keeping an eye out for monsters. The two then continue exploring the cave in search of the remaining gems to complete the mission. Suddenly, the protagonist notices a glowing purple trail on the wall and approaches to look. He notices that the deeper they go, the stronger the color of the magic trail in the cave becomes. With a confident smile, the young man points and tells his partner they should follow the trail. The archer is a bit surprised by his deduction but trusts her partner and follows him. Following the trail, they find another gem floating and protected by a magic barrier. The young man says this spot is easy, and if they break the barrier, the gem will be theirs at once. But suddenly, the Crimson Blade duo appears and finds them near the second gem of the test. With a smile, Kuriya says since they found it first, they can take the gem and go somewhere else. With that, the two warriors simply walk away, leaving Yuma and Natsume confused by the attitude. Natsume comments they are confident in their strength, which is why they don't care about the competition. The young man then gets ready and attacks the barrier with his sword, managing to grab the second gem. Natsume takes the item and cheers, saying now they only need 1 more to pass the test. With victory guaranteed, the two get excited because, with the remaining time, they will succeed. Meanwhile, we see that Narumi and Shimada also managed to team up for the test. Narumi complains about having to partner with an old guy and says he wanted to go with the pretty warrior girl. But suddenly, a jellyfish-like creature appears in front of the small adventurer. Catching him off guard, he is hit by an electric attack and screams in pain from the powerful shock. Shimada just laughs and records the scene, saying it's cool and asking if his partner is going to perish. After complaining for a while, the man gets tired of it and decides to help his teammate. He then grabs a large shield and blocks the electric attack of the cave creature. Fallen on the ground, Narumi thanks his partner for finally saving him from the monster. With a cynical smile, Shimada says he wanted more footage, but it would be a problem if he didn't make it. He even mocks him, saying Narumi's near-end face was great for his recording. With this, the duo realizes they still haven't found any of the gems needed to pass. Narumi shows the only one they got at the beginning and says there has to be a faster way. Shimada complains he is already losing track of where he is and wants to get out of that place soon. But the small adventurer gets determined and says he will join the team and rub it in everyone's face. With a serious look, the man notices his partner's determination and listens to his plan. Narumi approaches and starts whispering his strategy to find the gems and pass the test. After hearing the plan, Shimada seems to like the idea and says he is in to help his partner. With a wicked smile and a thumbs up, the two agree to follow Narumi's plan. Back to our protagonist, he and his partner continue exploring the dark and dangerous cave. Suddenly, he hears a loud, desperate scream coming from somewhere nearby in the dungeon. The two go on alert, and the young man points, telling his partner to go check what happened. There they find Shimada being attacked by several of those jellyfish creatures from before. Our protagonist draws his sword and prepares to step in and save the man from the attack. Seeing the dangerous situation, the young man yells they need to help and runs toward the monsters. Natsume also acts fast and prepares to shoot her arrows at the creatures attacking the man. After the fight, Shimada thanks the two for saving him and says he let his guard down for a moment. The archer says she is glad they arrived in time, but Yuma asks about his partner. Suddenly, Narumi pops up from behind them with a sneaky look and prepares to attack the group. The small adventurer then gives the signal and readies himself to put his plan into action against the two. He uses the swift theft skill and steals one of Natsume's items without her noticing the action. With the 2 gems in hand, Narumi celebrates the plan's success and jumps for joy in front of everyone. Natsume is furious and yells for him to return what he took, but it's already too late for that. Shimada then uses a skill and creates a water wave that knocks the protagonist and his partner away. The two fall into the water and get completely soaked while the traitorous duo celebrates their victory. The protagonist praises Shimada's plan and he mocks them, saying the two fell for it too easily. With the 3 gems in hand, the betraying duo now has enough to pass the gathering test. Wasting no time, the two run for the cave exit, leaving Yuma and Natsume behind. The archer gets angry because she didn't expect them to use a stealing skill to win. If the situation continues like this, our hero and his partner will be eliminated from the selection exam. But the protagonist reaches out his hand to help his partner up from the freezing water. With a determined look, he thanks her and says they don't have much time and must go after them. With this in mind, the young man stays focused and gets ready to come up with a plan to turn the tables. However, his partner interrupts him and tells him to stop right there, leaving the young man completely confused. With a serious look and a cold expression, the archer faces her partner and gets ready for what's coming. Moving forward, the duo comes across Narumi and Shimada on the ground and in trouble. Narumi yells for help, saying they were attacked by crystal creatures that appeared out of nowhere. The crystal monsters surround them, and the traitorous duo has nowhere to run from that ambush. Natsume gets angry and accuses them of trying to trick them and steal something again. But the small adventurer denies it desperately and swears this time they are telling the truth. The two realize they can't blame them for not trusting them after what they did earlier. With a look of compassion, our protagonist tells his partner they need to help. The young adventurer ignores the archer's suspicion and decides he will step into the fight. The girl asks if he is serious, but Yuma says he wants to give them the benefit of the doubt. He thinks if they are telling the truth, the two might end up falling if he does nothing. With that in mind, he wields his sword and says he'd rather be fooled than do nothing at all. Natsume just sighs and seems to agree with her partner's decision, even if reluctantly. She then warns that if they help, they must return the stolen gems with no excuses. Narumi is surprised because, even after everything, he is willing to give them a second chance. He notices the confident smile on the young man's face and wonders if he is really having fun. The small adventurer then thinks the protagonist's attitude is very cool and feels inspired. Yuma charges and attacks one of the crystal golems with his sword to clear a path for the others. Narumi warns that Shimada's attacks did nothing and that the protagonist needs to be careful. But the young man says he already understands the situation, and a light begins to glow in his hand for a plan. With a determined smile, he readies himself to use the legendary weapon he got from the dungeon. The spell-piercing rapier ignores defense and deals triple damage to inorganic creatures. While Yuma prepares, the archer says she will distract the monsters to open up a gap. She then fires several arrows that hit the crystal golems and draw their attention to her. Taking advantage of the chance, the protagonist charges and prepares to attack the monsters with his new weapon. With a precise strike, he pierces the core of one of the golems, causing massive damage to the creature. The sword slices through the crystal, and the young man is impressed with the power of his legendary weapon in action. Seeing the attack worked, he readies himself to keep fighting and defeat all the enemies. The protagonist then slices another golem in half with ease and feels confident in his power. But suddenly, one of the monsters survives the attack and grabs the young man with its crystal hand. The young adventurer is surprised and unable to react upon being caught off guard by the monster's attack. The crystal creature then uses the opportunity to steal Narumi's backpack holding the gems. With an evil smile, the small adventurer gets ready to put his real plan into action. Our protagonist praises the acting and says the little thief's performance wasn't bad at all. The young man then jumps back into the battle and seems ready to continue fighting the monsters. With a serious look, he prepares to face the remaining crystal creatures in the cave. Shimada then appears out of nowhere and lands a powerful punch on one of the golems to help in the fight. The man says he just slipped and wasn't really planning to help at that moment. Yuma then turns around and thanks the man for his unexpected help in the battle against the golems. With that, the protagonist readies himself to deliver the final blow and finish off the last cave monster. The creature shatters to pieces, and the young man finally manages to defeat all the crystal golems. With the battle over, Yuma says it is done, and now the others are safe. With tears in his eyes, Narumi calls him brother Jester and looks very grateful. The small adventurer then gets on his knees and promises to follow the young man forever. But Natsume calls him shameless and says she still hasn't forgiven him for cheating. Suddenly, the archer spots a purple gem on the floor and gets quite confused by it. Upon picking up the item, she is shocked as she realizes it is one of the test gems. The protagonist says the crystal monsters were powered by the gems they dropped. With that, they finally gather the 3 gems and celebrate because time was running out. At the cave exit, the group encounters the examiner who was waiting for the players. The man announces that the 12 duos who passed the test will move on to the simulated battle. The group is relieved and happy because now only one test remains for them to be approved. Nearby, 2 adventurers see a girl crying and wonder what happened. One of them explains that her partner got separated and was taken out by a monster in the dungeon. The girl cries, remembering that her companion fought with everything he had to survive. The Crimson Blade duo approaches and says they tried to help but arrived too late. She says it's not their fault, while our protagonist watches the scene with a serious look. The warrior then looks at his hand and starts to think to himself about his deeds. A memory then reveals that it was him who mercilessly eliminated the girl's partner. With a wicked smile, he mockingly thinks he feels sorry for what he did to the guy. The scene then shifts to a large, oriental-style gate where players gather for the exam. With a serious expression, the examiner announces the final and most important part of the test is about to begin. With that, all the players, including Yuma and his partner, listen carefully to each instruction. He explains that in the new world, the only thing they can trust is their own individual strength. The challenge is to enter the dungeons of the 4 beast generals and defeat the powerful bosses living there. The top 5 duos who contribute the most in the fight will pass, and the man yells for everyone to survive. Natsume is shocked because the 4 beast generals are enemies meant for level 30 players or higher. Our protagonist then notices the Crimson Blade duo walking by and sees something strange on their sword. He notices fresh red marks and that the monsters from the previous test didn't bleed like that. Yuma looks at the two with suspicion and begins to suspect that they are to blame for the other player's tragic end. All the participants are taken to a large room with 4 gates leading to the dungeon. The warrior of the duo announces they are heading to the fire chamber and invites anyone who wants to join them. However, the other players are afraid and know they lack the level to fight alongside the elite duo. Therefore, they decide it's better to defeat weaker monsters first to level up gradually. Natsume agrees with the idea and says they should also start by leveling up before anything else. But suddenly, Yuma raises his hand, completely surprising his partner with that attitude. The young man approaches the Crimson Blade duo and says he would like to go with them to the chamber. With a shrewd look, he says he is also curious about their way of doing things. The warrior smiles and agrees to the request, saying it's all good and they are now counting on the young man. Inside, a giant fire monster appears and is introduced as Forza, one of the beast generals. The duo's leader says the creature looks strong but will be no match for the two of them. With that, the female warrior charges in and strikes the monster with her hammer in a powerful, accurate hit. She says she managed to dodge the creature's counterattack, but seems a little worried about the situation. Her hammer then begins to glow with golden energy, showing the power of the large monster. The beast breaks out of its stun, and the warrior says everything went exactly as she planned. The warrior praises his partner and tells her to leave the rest to him as he preps his attack. With the Fireblade's skill, he slices the monster in half with a single blue energy strike. After the victory, he says it was very easy, while the protagonist watches everything from afar. Yuma thinks that even after winning, the two don't seem to be having any fun at all with the fight. Natsume approaches and praises the duo's coordination, saying there was no opening for them to act. Suddenly, the protagonist gets a serious and focused look, as if he noticed something important. With a swift movement, a flash of light cuts through the air, surprising everyone in the boss room. The archer is completely shocked to see the scene unfolding right in front of her. Our hero appears out of nowhere and blocks a surprise attack from the warrior with his sharp, thin sword. Natsume can't believe what she sees, and the other player looks surprised to be caught red-handed. But the warrior just flashes an evil smile and says he realized the young man had already figured out the truth. With a stain on the screen, the archer finally understands the true dark nature of that duo. Yuma says he had already guessed and outright accuses them of being rogue players in secret. The warrior's partner gets excited and says the main event has finally started and she's going to have fun. The protagonist then asks if the targets from the previous test were their doing and why they would do such a thing. With a mocking look, the warrior asks what is the fun in defeating monsters and creatures. He says people show expressions of fear and beg to be spared, which is way cooler. His partner gets hyped and says she is shivering just thinking about what Yuma will show them next. The swordsman says they knew the dangers of the new world and that they should be prepared for anything. With a wicked smile, he states that since the world turned out this way, they can play however they want. Rudian then appears out of nowhere, and Yuma gets angry, telling them not to joke around with him like that. The protagonist glares at them and says they are stealing people's futures without a care. With a furious look, the young adventurer shouts that this kind of thing is not the same as playing. He remembers Rudian and says playing is about expanding a person's true potential, and that it is actually about expanding one's own future with their own hands and choices. The spirit stares at the young man with a determined look, as if proud of those words. Suddenly, a golden light starts to glow in the young man's hand, getting ready for the big battle. With that, he charges forward, and the two swords clash in a flash of light and intense sparks. The warrior is surprised by the young man's strength and lets out a sound of admiration at the scene. With a focused look, our hero then activates the mimic skill to copy his opponent. At that, their swords clash once more in a battle of pure strength and skill. The swordsman comments that is a skill he has never seen before and gets quite curious. But he says that even with matching equipment, their stats are different and attacks him with everything. With the force of the strike, the protagonist is thrown backward and yells as he feels the impact. The enemy's blade manages to cut the young man's arm, who feels the real pain of that injury. He is completely shocked because he didn't expect the opponent to be so strong. The villain then flashes an evil smile and says that was exactly the face he wanted to see. Our protagonist stares back with determination, but suddenly a scream from Natsume catches his attention. The warrior's partner managed to pin the archer to the ground and threatens her with a sharp weapon. With a mocking smile, the woman asks if it hurts and calls her pathetic for getting caught. She then says with a cold look that they will all perish right there with no chance to escape. The swordsman turns to Yuma and asks what he will do now that his partner has been caught. From afar, Narumi and his partner watch everything and think the situation has gotten really ugly for everyone. They reveal the plan was to sneak into the room and steal the last hit, but the duo annihilated the boss. And to make matters worse, they found out the two were actually rogue players who eliminate others for fun. Narumi's partner says she wanted to help, but she can't because they would also be taken down there. With this, the two decide the best thing to do is run away from there as fast as they can. As they run, they apologize and say they will at least visit their graves later. Even in this tough spot, the protagonist faces the duo and says he will speak while he still can. With a serious look, he tells the two to stop right now and threatens to expose everything. The warrior just laughs at the threat and says even if he survives, no one will believe him. He explains them against the beloved elite duo, and nobody will listen to a nobody. The villain gives a confident and mocking smile while staring at the young man with a look of superiority. Outside, Narumi's partner turns and asks who the world would believe after all. But the man looks genuinely worried and says that guy is too dangerous for all of them. A memory begins showing Shimada in a boxing ring on a very important day in his life. He remembers winning the fight fairly, but even so, something went very wrong afterward. His opponent accused him of using low blows, but the man says that was all a huge lie. Nobody believed him, and the comments forced him to retire from his fighting career forever. Because of that, he decided he would stand out by being outrageous, and that's when he started streaming. For him, being a player is just a way to get content, and even the new continent is just for views. He thought he could live just by acting and letting life take its course, but something changed his mind. Ultimately, he realizes that people like the rogue duo still make him really angry. Narumi is startled by the attitude shift and asks his partner what got into him all of a sudden. Back to the fight, the warrior steps on our protagonist, who is lying on the ground unable to react. The villain says he is going to finish the young man off very slowly and tells him not to pass out. With an evil smile full of malice, the swordsman tells the young man to scream out to him in despair. He then thinks that is the opponent's true face and that he is truly terrifying. Our protagonist is confused by the situation and doesn't seem to grasp what's happening there. Suddenly, Shimada and Narumi appear, and the man says he finally caught the duo's real faces. The swordsman turns angrily and asks the two what on earth they are still doing there. Narumi stammers out that they figured something bad would happen and sneaked in. The small adventurer gets visibly nervous and breaks into a cold sweat from the tension. They say this is payback for earlier, and that they are there now to help brother Jester. The court fool is completely surprised by the two's attitude and what they came to do. The villain complains they ruined the best part and asks if they want to be the first to fall. His partner then steps forward, saying she will take care of it while calling the others disgusting worms. The warrior attacks with everything, but Shimada uses the shield block skill and defends against the blow. With a smile, he says he was dying to see how he would fare against someone like her in a fight. The woman tells him to endure her judgment hammer, preparing to strike with even more force. Followed on the ground, the archer thanks the two for returning to help in the tough battle. Spotting an opening in the fight, the adventurer readies herself and says that is her chance to strike. She says a charged shot is stronger than weapons and asks them to buy her a little time. Narumi understands the plan and tells the archer to leave it to them as he prepares a special item. With a shout, the small adventurer then tosses the item toward the rogue duo. The rogue's smoke explodes and covers the battlefield, leaving the protagonist quite surprised. Inside the smoke, the young adventurer says that really helps and gets ready to act. With a battle cry, the archer finally fires her arrow with all the strength she could gather. She says the arrow is charged and everything depends on this single powerful attack now. The skill's name is Explosive Arrow, an attack of golden energy that is highly destructive. The arrow flies at high speed toward the female warrior who is fighting Shimada. The attack hits her directly, and the woman screams as she feels the devastating impact of the energy arrow. Her partner nearby is also caught in the blast and blown away by the force. The swordsman manages to defend himself with his sword and yells that something on that level won't stop him. He realizes his sword vanished and Narumi appears, saying his guard is wide open for an attack. With the swift theft skill, Narumi tosses the stolen sword to his new big brother. Our protagonist then catches the weapon and says the swordsman's reign ends right now. Yuma activates the playful spirit, and the weapon's blade begins to glow with blue energy. The sword then transforms, revealing its name, the powerful Demon Slayer. He thinks maybe the weapon was always meant to be used that way, which is why it glows. The young adventurer preps himself and charges full force at the enemy swordsman to fight. Terrified, the villain yells and tells the young man to stay far away and not come any closer. But Yuma hits him with a powerful, accurate strike right in the middle of his stomach with the sword. With a serious look, he says what the villain did is unforgivable and there is no coming back for him. Fallen on the ground, the swordsman glares at our hero, who is ready to deliver the final strike of the fight. With both villains defeated, the young man says they will finally pay for their crimes. After that, the four adventurers continue exploring the dungeons together as a team. They even work together to defeat another one of the selection exam's powerful bosses. With that, the test concludes, and the examiner announces the 10 chosen for the expedition. To everyone's joy, the four friends celebrate together because they managed to pass the test. Natsume is surprised, but the court fool is very happy they made as a team. The archer gets thoughtful about the situation, but seems to be changing her mind about him. With that, the two high-five to celebrate the victory and the new partnership they formed. The scene then shifts, showing the adventurer in a room with her guild master Takajo. The man says Yuma is more capable than he thought, and he will make him serve his guild. He then hands over an item and orders the girl to use it when she spots an opening on the new continent. The item is a doll called the Eye of Mitra, which controls the mind of whoever looks at it for 10 seconds. Natsume is shocked to realize this is a very dangerous mind control item. Her master asks if she can do it, saying it is for the sake of the righteous ideal they follow. With a determined look, the archer clenches her fist and seems to agree with his order. The scene changes and the group arrives at a building hosting an item exchange event. Inside, several players are trading and selling their weapons and gear to others. Our protagonist is surprised, not expecting so many people to be at that place. One of the adventurers says they need to stock up on items before heading to the new continent. But the young man warns them they need to be careful, because this happened a lot in the game too. He explains about trade scams and knockoffs while the archer holds an item. Natsume gets annoyed and says he could have spoken up sooner, because she already fell for a scam. She explains a vendor told her he'd sell some very good gear for a low price. The girl thought it was a great deal for an item she saw called the Gale Mantle. The vendor then offered the item for 70,000 yen, a very low price for a good item. She thinks it's cheap for an item that boosts agility and appears to be in great condition. With that, the adventurer decides to buy the item and hands the money to the vendor on the spot. The man says thanks and that he already sent the item to her inventory to finalize the trade. But upon checking, she sees she received a tattered mantle that is virtually worthless in the game. She is shocked, and the vendor apologizes, saying he sent the wrong item by mistake. The adventurer is stunned and realizes the vendor didn't make a mistake, but tricked her on purpose. Yuma understands the situation and explains the man swapped the item the moment she turned to get the money. With the fake item in hand, the girl glares at the vendor with a furious look and prepares to confront him. With tears in her eyes, she complains she spent all her money and now she can't buy anything else. The protagonist then takes the tattered mantle and tells the archer she can get her item back. With a confident smile and green energy in his hand, Yuma tells the man not to underestimate a jester. The young man then approaches another vendor and says he can only offer this in an item trade. The other vendor is completely shocked and speechless seeing what the young man was offering. The item was an ancient and mystical gold sword that glowed with powerful golden light. Yuma wonders if the man is dumb for trading 10 epic items for that and asks if it isn't enough. The vendor then thinks the young man is the perfect mark and says he'll see what he can give in return. He then offers 3 items in exchange for the sword: a gem, a horn, and a pair of goggles. The protagonist acts like he is super surprised and asks if the man would really give all that. The vendor offers the Gale Mantle and a Thunder War horn for the trade with the sword. Additionally, he also offers a spirit stone as part of the deal with the young adventurer. With a smile, the young man agrees, and the vendor celebrates getting such great equipment. The man then mocks him, saying the sword is worth 100 times more and the young man is a huge clown. He cheers because he hit the jackpot, but the sword he took starts glowing with a green light. Suddenly, the item in his hands transforms into the very same tattered mantle he sold earlier. The vendor is left in utter shock, and the bluff skill is explained as altering the target's perception. Yuma then pops up with the traded items and gets a kick out of the situation he just set up. With a smile, the young man says the man scored big, and he recognizes him as the girl from before. Yuma explains that the more someone scams, the more confident they get, ending up leaving openings. The vendor sits down defeated and realizes he was scammed, wondering what kind of skill that was. Seeing the protagonist's identity, he is shocked because his class is a court fool. The young man is surprised that the man knows his class and wonders who he really is. The vendor explains it makes sense he was tricked, because that is one of the legendary hidden classes. He reveals that class was cut prior to release and was never implemented into the game. The man worked as a beta tester for Vanaheim Online and knew the game's secrets. He says the beta version had hidden dungeons, and even the new continent was a scrap map. The protagonist gets curious if the continent was scrapped. Why is it there now in the game? The vendor says he might find the answer if he heads there, and that a jester is a perfect fit for the place. With that, he apologizes for what he did and returns the items to the archer as a parting gift. The man then waves to the group and wishes them to stay safe on their journey through the new world. With a smile, Yuma says thanks and that he plans to enjoy every second of this grand adventure. And so, the departure day for the new continent finally arrived, and they board a ship. On the new continent, uncharted lands always stirred people's hearts, even amidst chaos. Those who awakened as players couldn't help but feel drawn to that place. And no matter the dangers waiting for them, the protagonist wanted to see the new world with his own eyes. With a smile on his face and the spirit of an adventurer, Yuma is ready for whatever lies ahead. Far away, Guildmaster Takajo analyzes the map, thinking about the new continent's lands and resources. Meanwhile, Yuma thinks about the cultures, foods, and people he will meet on his new journey. But Takajo has other plans and wants to bring everything of value under his total control. The protagonist reaches out to the sun because all he truly desires at that moment is freedom. The villain, on the other hand, clenches his fist tightly, as what he wants most is to simply take it all for himself. The two say they will make the most of the chance, but with entirely different ideals. Back on the ship, our hero looks out at the horizon and says they must be getting close to their destination. Natsume holds the doll and says the adventure seems to be just beginning for the group of friends. With a determined look, she thinks that as soon as they arrive, she will put her plan into action. The young adventurer and his companion Rudian keep a close watch on the scenery. But suddenly, a sailor comes running, yelling that something is going terribly wrong. He says desperately that the ship is being attacked by several sea monsters that have surfaced. A giant serpent then attacks the man, and the protagonist yells for the sailor to watch out. With a serious look, the young man realizes the gravity of the situation and the danger everyone is facing. From the bottom of the ocean, a colossal and terrifying creature emerges to attack the vessel.